Why isn't my book selling? For those of you who write fiction the way I do, you've probably asked yourself that a million times because it's never an easy answer, is it? Inevitably, when you ask people, why do you think my book isn't selling? It's probably somebody who enjoyed your book and you would like to get their feedback. The first thing on everybody's list is, maybe your cover isn't speaking to the right people. Now, for those of us who are authors and are not artistically inclined, unfortunately, if this is true, that means we spent money asking a designer to create a cover for us, one that we approved and said we were happy with, and we were, only to find out that either it's not speaking to anybody, a la crickets on the Amazon Marketplace, or it's speaking to people, but not the ones who would actually enjoy the content of our books. That's a problem too. This week, I just got back from the 20 Books Vegas Authors Convention. It is the very first author convention that I've been to, and it was chock full of wonderful, very well earning independent authors. These are people who are multi-millionaires, and they do it publishing fiction in a variety of genres. It's not just the smut, even though there were plenty of those there as well. And I came home with a big to-do list, something to think about. What do I need to change to sell my books? What do I need to do to advertise my books? But the overriding impression I got was that before I advertise, before I write my next book, before I do anything, you guys, my covers need some work. And maybe yours do too. That's what this video is about. Hello, shameless writers. I'm Kristen McTiernan, the nonsense-free editor here for your regular dose of writing wisdom. And in this case, design wisdom, I guess we can go with. I am not a designer. As a matter of fact, I was just lamenting to one of my Twitter friends that in terms of designing things and doing the visual arts, straight up, I'm terrible. I'm grown enough to admit when I'm bad at something. And if I were a traditionally published author, frankly, that wouldn't be a problem. Nobody would care that I simply can't put a composite together and have a picture speak words of a story. That's not my job. But as an independent author, unfortunately, it is. And if you write fiction and plan to publish it independently, it's your job too. So, like I said, upon returning from 20 Books Vegas, I had some very serious questions, specifically about my book covers. As I sat through some of those really fantastic talks, I started to realize that I may have a bigger problem on my hands than just writing and rewriting my back cover blurbs, because those apparently didn't seem to be the problem. It was getting the clicks in the first place that seemed to be the problem, which indicates a problem with the covers. So I went to the interwebs, specifically my Twitter account, and I decided to ask for help. The majority of my followers and people who are mutuals are copywriters or sword and sorcery, fantasy, sci-fi, pulp readers. These are people who not only write in the genre, but they also read prolifically in it. And unlike me, a lot of them are RPG players and are actually much more visually inclined. So I pitched it out to them. I said, okay, Twitter people, tell me what's wrong with this cover. Specifically, is this overly gendered? Is this something that would even appeal to males? This is my first book, Sunder of Time. It should be noted that this cover is actually the second one that I did. The first one was one that I did on my own. So, I mean, it's not it's not the worst cover in the world, but it's very plain. It's not something that's going to encourage anybody to read it. And unfortunately, as it turns out, neither is the new one that I paid for. There were a good many of the commenters who said, yeah, this is kind of a chick book. I, as a male reader, one who reads prolifically in fantasy, I wouldn't be inclined to pick this up, especially in the thumbnail size. Once some of them expanded the picture and saw the gears and the tagline that this was the Mason Timeline trilogy, some of them were intrigued. I actually sold 4 books that day, but if they'd have seen it in the Amazon store, they would not have stopped. They would not have been intrigued. And because my Twitter following is like me and they're very upfront and they understand that being firm but fair is important, a lot of them flat out told me there's nothing special or unique about this cover. It doesn't tell me anything about the genre. It doesn't tell me anything about the story. It's just some pretty lady's face. Pretty ladies are good, but I wouldn't stop to read the blurb. Now, this kind of feedback can be hard to hear, especially when this is a series that's close to your heart, especially when you paid for new covers for it. And just for an extra laugh, let me show you what the second book in the series used to look like. Okay, This is the cover. Remember, I told you I was bad at this. This is the cover that originally was on it that I designed. I accept your judgment and your scorn. It's bad. And it's honestly mostly the reason why I had the series redone in the first place because book 2 was so bad. So bad, you guys, and the sales really reflected it. However, the new cover, again, plain, doesn't really say anything about the genre. It certainly doesn't communicate that this is a dystopian time travel series that has elements of conspiracy and Freemasonry and freewheeling travel throughout a United States that was settled by the Spanish instead of the English. It says none of those things. So, in order to determine what kind of design that I want, and in order to better inform my artist as to what they should create when the time comes, I do have some rules that I'm going to follow that I picked up at the 20 Books Vegas convention, and those rules are the ones I am going to communicate to you with examples. Rule number one, the genre must be immediately obvious in the book cover. Now, before you start jumping to examples of minimalist covers, you are correct that that has been a trend recently. See The Midnight Library, which is a wildly successful book that was published, and I think it's science fiction. I haven't read it, but I know it's very, very popular, especially on Book Talk. But I do want to tell you that minimalist covers are great if you have the backing of a big five publisher. If you have a window display at Barnes and Nobles, this beautiful minimalist cover will not hurt your sales. But if you're an independently published author and the majority of your sales are going to be done through online exchanges like Amazon and people are flipping through those small little thumbnails, I'm afraid most of us can't get away with this, which is sad. We can look at some other books that have better examples of how to communicate time travel or historical fiction on the cover. You don't need to read the back blurb to know exactly what you're dealing with. These books that I'm flashing up on the screen, these books nail it. Some of them are independently published, some of them are not. But the common thread through all of them is that you know that you're looking at a time travel book when you look at this cover. You can't say the same for mine. Moving away from time travel, I want to use my friend Rachel Ellen. Rachel Ellen is unique because, like some other authors, she is a multi-genre writer. So not all of her covers are going to look the same. She just did a redesign on one of her books, and it's called What Goes Around. Originally, the cover that she had very much communicated that this was kind of a spicy romance book. It wasn't. And so when spicy romance readers picked it up, they were disappointed and left bad reviews. But now she has a cover that very firmly communicates this is women's literature. It does have a touch of the paranormal, but it's still just women's literature. She also did a redesign on her actually spicy novella series. Her previous book designs were very minimalist. They had a feather duster or a party mask. You didn't know what genre you were looking at. You do now. That hottie communicates all kinds of things with her bedroom eyes. Hey, girl. If you can communicate the genre through a quick glance, you've won half the battle. Typically speaking, when readers browse in the bookstore, what do they browse by? Maybe the actual author or maybe by bestsellers, but most of the time, they're browsing by genre. They know what they like to read and they want something that jumps out at them and says, "Excuse me, that thing that you really like, it's in my book." In addition to communicating the genre, you get extra points if you can communicate at least one of the tropes used in your book. If you're doing a swords and sorcery book, you should have a sword or something to do with the arcane of your world on the cover. That way the reader knows what they're dealing with. If you're doing monster erotica, which I only recently found out is a thing, don't be judgy. Don't be judgy. You should put the monster on your book cover. It would be very unwise just to put a pretty lady on your cover and just call it good. No, you're writing a very specific book, and it's best to communicate that specificity with your cover design. Rule number two is that the book cover should evoke some level of curiosity. I got this rule from author M.D. Cooper, who is a military sci fi author. And as you can see, all of her books have a female protagonist. However, she doesn't just have an action girl standing on the front. There is action going on around her. We can see that she's in space, so we know that this is a futuristic world. We know that she's armed. Okay, military sci fi, that's awesome. And adding to the curiosity factor, we see a series of explosions, or we see a gun battle or a pew pew spaceship battle. What's going on here? Who's fighting? Is she fighting with somebody or is she just observing this battle? I want to learn more. These books are a fantastic illustration of what it means to immediately grip your reader and saying, okay, not only is this book for you, but you definitely want to dive in as soon as possible so you can find out what's going on in this picture. Curiosity is a huge factor and one thing that none of my covers have, like zero. It's so depressing. And rule number three is your cover should evoke an emotion. Going back to those time travel covers, there is a lot of different time travel, which appeals to a lot of different types of readers. You have a cover that obviously is designed to appeal to a hard sci fi time travel audience, which evokes a much stronger sense of technology, of curiosity than this other type of time travel cover, which evokes a sense of romance, a sense of pining for the past. These two books are both time travel, but they are evoking a different emotion. And the reason that they're evoking a different emotion is because they are targeting different readers. So, part of understanding what design you should be going to is understanding who you are appealing to. And once you know who you're appealing to, you will also need to tailor what emotion you want your cover to evoke. So that's all I have for this week. If you like time travel, specifically dystopian time travel, and are interested in the idea of how US history could have gone, I've included the link to the Mason Timeline trilogy below if you're willing to look past my mediocre current book covers. And until next week, take care and write well.